Yes.
I'm gonna ask another question, because I think it's good timing that, from the floor, we get the opportunity to put these questions to the panel. Dale, this one's directed at you, brother. But, I hear you in this document. I see it, I read it well. But time and time again, and I say again, I'm a country girl. I come from country. I live and breathe country. And no disrespect, because I'm living in metropolitan area and to any other areas. And I've worked across, many remote communities in South Australia, throughout Northern Territory in my work. And the thing that really gets me is, getting on board and getting the message, and I'll put it to the panel that, how are we going to get this message to our mob that are in the remotest parts of South Australia and get them on board so they can understand all of this language, and so they are well informed. And that's just something I want to put to you and, maybe the floor, because that's my passion where I am, and, I live and breathe, and, I just want to make sure that, the process is fair, and yeah. So I guess, I'll just put it out there again, another question.
No, very good question, and probably one of the most important pieces that we've got to think about as we communicate this across our state. Because the most important thing in terms of the reform piece and the invitation has been done. In terms of the national process, with the Attorney General laying his second reading speech in the Federal Parliament, has been done. The Electoral Commission rolling around and getting information down for enrolling Aboriginal people on the roll, and the nomination process is in train. The overwhelming feedback and the overwhelming conversation that keeps leading back to is, do our mob and do our community really know the power of the mechanism we're trying to do to empower our voices, and importantly local and regional voices? And quite simply, it's not strong enough just yet for my comfort. It's not strong enough yet where we've been engaging at local level to go and meet with the range and spread of the diversity of our communities on the ground in each community, to make sure that they're fully informed what's going on. The opportunity we have across metropolitan and regional zones is, I can say this thing 3 times and people don't get it, but they come to the 4th one and it all drops. So I'm very conscious that I've got to spend a bit more time in our local communities to give them the opportunity to talk through it and sit through it and yarn through the points of the conceptualisation of what this looks like, with a bit more patience and a bit more time. And as we know, we're now against the clock. We're against the clock because dates have been set. And so there's a bit more, importance in terms of who goes and speaks with the community. But it's also an importance for those who are in positions of connection, understanding, leadership, and who engage with our communities on the ground, to also spread that message. And that's a hard task to ask. It's a hard task to ask because we know that the further we go on with this, we're getting more into what we call the grey zone, or the battlefield. So the frontline people who are talking about this have moved into battle zone, and of course who are going against the ones who are saying the hard no, or writing political positions that are against the voice, or going into sort of positions which don't fully understand what's going on, or spread misinformation, or in some instances, as we know that some politicians have been called out, they dead set lie. And so we've got to spend our time recorrecting that narrative. All the time we're doing that, the important information that we need to spread on the ground, the time's not being spent there, which is a bit of a concern for me too, to be honest.
When is South Australia going to promote yes? I've heard from the Greens that's going to be happening, but I'm still waiting for it. I'm just seeing on mainstream TV, no, vote no to the voice.
Yeah, well, in terms of the Yes campaign, the federal campaign was launched here in South Australia, Tandanya, I think 2 months ago.
Yes.
So in terms of, again, South Australia leading the way with how we support national reform pieces, it was agreed by the national working group that the the national launch should be launched in Adelaide.
Yes.
So 8 weeks ago we did a national launch campaign here with Tandanya in partnership with our core CEO of Tandanya, Phil Saunders, and they had around 800 people attend that launch session. And this goes to the point of what I guess I'm saying is that the political narrative that gets coverage is there's the Lydia Thorpes, the Jacinttas,
Yes.
the Duttons. Where's the narrative to support the first-hand people that were there?
There isn't
who
any.
often go against that negative grain or the negative narrative to dispel what we're calling misinformation. So in terms of what happens between the information that's important, that we are trying to spread the message to be accurate and represent the working group's presentation is one thing, and we've got to remember how we do that, which all comes back to the design principles.
No, I just said I haven't.
How we challenge the national framework between misinformation or people who have walked out of the Uluru Convention is another high-level challenge that we've got to spend our time on.
I also have another question about, you talking about, I know a lot of my family members haven't enrolled to vote. So how are you going to get them to enrol to vote, to have a say in the voice?
Yeah, so I guess South Australia, again, we're lucky with two processes. So the South Australian Electoral Commission will be going around in the time frame that I'm out for round 3 to increase the uptake of and spread, I guess, important education awareness to Aboriginal people on why it's important to be on the roll, to express their democratic right. In terms of the data that we've got for South Australian Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander being on the roll is we've got over 38,000 Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islanders here in South Australia who are on the roll. In the last election, we had 28,000 of those participate in the state election. What that means is what our numbers tell us is between the 49 to 50,000 that we have in South Australia in terms of Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islanders, we have almost a 55-60% participation rate of those who are in the roll. What we do know is that there are those heavily disengaged groups, young people, regional, rural and local communities who don't have the opportunities like we do to be aware of what the importance of being in the role is about. So working with the Electoral Commission in this state process, I guess, is one round. And of course the Australian Electoral Commission, the Federal Commission, will be coming around in a second round. So I guess South Australia are getting 2 bites of the cherry to try and get out to see our communities to make sure they're aware of both the state election process and the referendum process.
Arnie, Cheryl, just to, I guess, add some bit to your first question. So I've really seen my role as wanting to get out as much as I can to inform, my mob. And it's been really challenging getting support to do that, particularly when you get organisations like local government that won't support holding forums because they've got to be apolitical, and then they're sitting in the chamber because there's no blackfellas in the chamber of local government making decisions about whether they're going to support the Uluru statement or a yes vote. So it is really challenging. The reality, and it's a bit of an oxymoron, and I really struggle with this, but I've got to accept it, is that the Uluru statement is about our self-determination. It's about our sovereignty. It's about justice. But the reality is, it's up to 97% of white Australia that'll be voting about what they think about Aboriginal people. And the reality is, if it doesn't get up with a yes, Australia's a racist country.
And there's a point of reflection, and I have these debates in my own household. I don't shy away from it. I think it's I reckon. Well, I'm the youngest on the panel, so I take that one. The others can kick me later for it. But and Dwayne's actually an older cousin of mine, which even makes it worse. So everyone to give me a kick later. But it's an interesting dynamic when you are the minority in a country, And I reflect what that means for me when you have to be an even louder voice to challenge what is the dominant voice in this country, which is the likes that are getting media waves to push their agenda. One thing that won't change is that I will go to bed the night before the election as a Warragugutha man, and whatever the vote is, I will wake up the next day as a Warragugutha man with the same problems, the same issues, with the same work that I have to go pull up my socks, and nothing changes within that circumstance. Yes, I unashamedly tell anyone where I go, vote yes and why, and have that discussion. But, you know, I will be deeply saddened if it is a no, but I'll still wake up a Warragugutha man the next day with the same issues that I had the day before the vote, with the same issues that are in our community, you know, with the same challenges ahead of us. And yes, the voice will set us on a pathway and a trajectory to really, you know, to challenge and be in a place, you know, in a respectful place within our country. But, you know, at the same time, we need to not fool ourselves with the fact that we've got a big journey ahead of us. There are a lot of wrongs, you know, that we have to work through. There's a lot of truth telling. It is a very big process. This is not one and done like Dwayne has phrased it. You know, we've got a journey to go on, all of us.
And I just need to reiterate that, because there are, like Melissa was saying about, well, how do you close the gap if they don't unlock the gate? There are currently gatekeepers who want to maintain the status quo. There are currently people who do not want to see any change in Aboriginal affairs because they earn a pay packet, they have a job, they have security. So those are the tough conversations we need to have, and it includes our own people as well. You know, that's the honest truth. But at the end of the day, they know very well that they're feathering their own nest. And they're not community people. They're not worried about the most vulnerable, our most important. That is our elders and our young people. And I want to say to Auntie Roxanne, thank you for bringing the aunties, but also we need young people here as well. We need our young fellas to stand up and make a stand, and to educate their elders, to educate their communities. Because at the end of the day, Arrin and I, being the young fellas on this panel, we've been a part of this process for the last 6 years, but we've just gone from strength to strength to strength. And it is learning from people like Uncle Tordo, may he rest in peace, and all those elders who have gone before us. You know, and I think about, you know, when we speak about the race power and the idea that, you know, there's a special power that the federal government have to make laws in regards to races, it goes back to Hindmarsh Island. And a very, very important person was Auntie Doreen Katinuri, Auntie Dodo. And I will never forget when she passed away, she spoke about the fact that you build that bridge and you watch what will happen to the Murray. And then literally a few years later, after her passing, we were dealing with water restrictions. We were dealing with water restrictions here in South Australia. She knew very well what was going to happen. She had the foresight to know, you muck with that special place, it's going to bite you back. And sure enough. So we've got to think long term in terms of we need to bring people on this journey with us and make sure they know the truth. Because at the end of the day, South Australia has been a leader. We will always be leaders, not just through the colonial context, but you think about the fact that we are still here. We have still fought the systems. And, you know, when we think about voting, these fellas come from Point Macleay, Raukin. Raukin was one of the first places where Aboriginal people voted in the country. That was back in 1898. Like, the first recorded vote in Australia was done at Point Macleay, Raukin Mission. 10 votes were cast, even though the mission manager at the time didn't like it. He didn't like it, but guess what? Aboriginal people stood strong. Ngarrindjeri stood strong for their rights, and they put forward and they voted for that.